Ricardo Salas here. Today we're going to be discussing immigration. And the reason for that is because it's such an important issue. At least it's been made an important issue in recent years by the previous administration. And it's been used as a political football to galvanize the base of the Republican Party to go out and vote, trying to generate tremendous fear and anxiety among the American electorate with a slew of misrepresentations, distortions, and out lies about whether or not immigrants are a positive influence and have a positive impact on American society, or whether or not they're disruptive and destructive to the future of the United States. First of all, trying to deal with this issue in a rational, reasonable way is important, to the extent that we can try to present the issue in a more practical and realistic fashion, because of the fact that the United States is indeed an immigrant country. We have over, it's estimated 15% of our population is not native born. They're from outside the United States. And they've been painted as lazy, no accounts, in the worst possible light, criminals and rapists, and destroying the fabric of American society, American culture, whatever that means, because there is no uniform American culture. There is not. The South has a distinct culture that is unique from the Midwest, and the Midwest has its own culture that's distinct from, let's say, the Southwest, or you talk about people from California and how they perceive themselves and how they see themselves in American society. So there are different cultures in the United States, depending upon which region, whether it's New Yorkers in the Northeast, or whether it's Californians from San Francisco to Los Angeles, etc. People are different. And so the nature of culture has an impact on political outcomes in our society. But studies show that immigrants that arrive in the United States tend to readily assimilate within a generation. That they don't isolate themselves and typically align themselves to their own particular group. And this is, again, a distortion, a misrepresentation. And depending upon how close, let's say if we're talking about Mexican Americans, how close they are to the border of Mexico, determines whether or not they hold on to some of the traditions and culture from the homeland, from Mexico. As we move further away from the border, we find that there's tremendous amount of assimilation among Mexican Americans. Studies show that if one were to look at the personal interaction between Latinos and the mainstream of American society, 1/3 of Latin women tend to marry white Americans, white male Americans. And in a similar statistic, Asian women, 1/3 of them tend to marry white males. So if anything, a sizable percentage of people from different cultures, from different places around the world, end up integrating and marrying. And this is the most personal thing that can happen. People that are part of the dominant society of the United States. And then when one looks at the relationship of Mexico to the United States, I mean, there's a 2,000-mile border. There's 18 miles of Pacific Ocean that brings the two countries closer together. There's 12 miles of the Gulf of Mexico. So even if the United States wanted to wall itself off from its southern neighbor. It's just not possible, just based on the physical geography of these two countries. We share a 2,000-mile border. 4 states are close to the border. California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. And the people of those states have historically had a close relationship between people from Mexico and the United States. Why do people come to the United States? Whether they come here legally or illegally, why do they come here? Because we have the most powerful economy that offers tremendous amount of opportunities to people that can get here. And if you look at the disparity between the wages that are paid in Mexico versus the wages that are paid in the United States, at one time when I studied this issue much more closely, there was a dramatic difference in wages between the United States worker versus the Mexican worker. This is why NAFTA was born, no? The wall that was proposed by Trump and his supporters, saying build a wall that Mexico would pay for it. Anyone that just looks at the issue marginally, doesn't even intimately do some research on why that situation is would not and could not work. It's physically impossible to build a wall, a barrier that can prevent people that are hell-bent on coming to the United States from Mexico. It's just not possible. The physical nature of the border between Mexico and the United States gives ample opportunity for those that want to come to the United States to get into this country. And these immigrants that come here, that's the other thing. But are they the monsters that they are painted to be? Destroying American culture and American society is ridiculous. As I pointed out, within a relatively short time, they tend to assimilate into American culture. And if they don't, their children do. They adapt to this society relatively easily compared to our European counterparts. Studies have proven this and shown this, that the assimilation rates of people coming from other countries to the United States, we've been extraordinarily successful in being able to assimilate individuals into American culture within a relatively short time. What keeps people apart is socioeconomic class, poverty. You have enclaves of large numbers of African Americans and Latinos that tend to live in poor neighborhoods. And the crime rates of those neighborhoods tend to be higher, of course, because of the social ills that are characteristic of those areas. And there was a study done, a 5-year study done in Texas looking at immigrants, newly arrived immigrants, and the level of crimes that are committed by those compared to native-born Americans. And the crime rate among native-born Americans was twice that of immigrants coming from south of the border. So relatively little crime is committed by immigrants. Some do, of course, because in every group you're going to have some bad apples. But the vast majority of immigrants that come to the United States are law-abiding, hard-working, productive members of our society. They're not here, and it's illegal for them to get onto the welfare dole. Newly arrived immigrants can't receive any kind of social welfare benefits for 5 years, and of course illegals don't have access, and yet they pay taxes, they pay into the system that they're not going to be provided benefits from. And so to that extent, because we have an aging population, especially among whites in the United States, they tend to be supportive in their based on the taxes that they pay of the social safety net, the two most popular being Social Security and Medicare. So to that extent, they're benefiting this country. And then if you look at trade between the two countries, between the United States and Mexico, that's the number one trading partner of the United States. Mexico is, with over $600 billion of trade between the two countries occurring annually. And so Mexico's number one, Canada's number two, and China's number three. So we are intimately involved economically, and we both countries benefit. That is Mexico and the United States from that trade. And so, and a recent study pointed out that 2/3 of economic growth can be directly attributed to immigrants that have come to the United States in recent years. So, and for every 1% increase in migration of immigrants to this country, we have a 2% increase in gross domestic product per capita in the United States. So those statistics bear witness to the economic benefits that immigrants bring to this country. And then if you look at it from a personal point of view, studies have found that immigrants bring an entrepreneurial spirit, a dynamism to the economy, and they contribute in terms of they have the highest amount of startup companies are begun by immigrants in the United States. Nobel Prize winners are represented. Patents that are created in this country come largely from immigrants. So to wall ourselves off and to say we don't want any more immigrants coming here, well, we want to prevent them from coming to this country because they're destroying our society, is ridiculous. It's a sad state of affairs when one starts to look at all of the pros, and even the conservative think tank, the Cato Institute, has concluded the very same things that I'm pointing out about some of the distortions and misrepresentations that somehow they're going to destroy our country, that they're going to bring an alien culture and create conflict and turmoil, and because we live in an era of terrorism, that they're going to it's going to be easier for terrorists to come here because of immigration rules that are very strict, by the way. It's not easy to immigrate to the United States. Anybody that comes here has to go through a plethora of obstacles to get here, to be willing to come to a different society altogether before they're able to legally come to this country. So we have a strong vetting process to try to weed out any potential problems, you see. So for me, it's really a tragedy that it's been made such a critical issue in recent years, where human beings are coming here to try to improve a lot of their lives, and that there are jobs waiting for them that Americans simply will not do. That's just a reality. There's work that pays so little, and the dangers of the type of employment where many immigrants are engaged in now. For example, the area of farming, agriculture, the picking of our crops, over 50% of the people, at least studies show, are immigrants. And a sizable percentage. We can go out, if we went out just anecdotally and just interviewed some of the people that are out there, not that they would want to be interviewed, but if we're able to do that, go out there, we would see children out there working in the fields, picking a variety of crops on a daily basis to make ends meet. Most of these people are illegal immigrants. So and what do they provide? This is why the United States is the breadbasket of the world, because of these immigrants. Which brings up another interesting instance where the state of Alabama passed legislation to ban illegal immigrants from their state. And what did that do? What did that accomplish? What it did is basically it destroyed the farming industry, or it hurt the farming industry where they lost over $1 billion, unfortunately, sadly. And that experiment did not go well. They said the politicians at the time were saying that somehow we're going to use prison labor to replace those individuals that we kick out of the state. And they found that the prisoners said, hell no, we're not going to do this kind of work. We're not going to work out there for the pittance that you want to pay us. There's no way. So it was a complete failure. And they changed the law quietly, you know. There was a lot of fanfare when it was out there, you know. It was talking about what immigrants are doing to the society as a whole. So, in looking at this issue, it should be a non-controversial one. And for generations, both political parties, the Democrats and Republicans, supported trade. And when we're talking about trade, you know, factors of production in the economy is land, labor, and capital. The most critical is labor, for example, in inputs that help bring economic growth and productivity to a society. No, the better trained, the better skilled, the better educated your workforce, the higher the standard of living for your society. And this goes way back to classical economic theory. No, the principles first articulated by Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations, that David Ricardo incorporated into his theory of comparative advantage in 1810, arguing that countries that trade with one another actually are benefited. That is, what trade does is it creates greater competition in the domestic market, forcing producers to provide services and goods at a cheaper price. And it compels individuals to become much more innovative in trying to maximize profitability and minimize costs. And there was no disputing that. As I pointed out, both the Democrats and the Republicans embraced a free trade. And in fact, after World War II, the argument went that we want to do everything in our power to integrate the global economies, and by so doing, and they become more interdependent with one another, there's less willingness to resolve disputes by going to war or conflict or having conflict with our bordering nations. No, war is just too costly. Conflicts are too costly, and so if we integrate economies, so the argument went, if we create greater integration among the world of nations, then this will bring some incentive to try to minimize differences through negotiation and compromise rather than through war and conquest, you see. And that makes sense. Although we pride ourselves as being a peace-loving country, the United States has been engaged in more conflicts and wars since the end of World War II than any other country on the face of this planet, sadly. And that has to do with another issue of, you know, we maintain a global military presence in over 100 countries, spending billions of dollars in maintaining that police force at a time when we have skyrocketing deficits and increasing debt of the federal government. We're doing this. And so there are various theorists that say that we have to cut back on that. That inevitably and eventually what happens to an empire. The United States is a global powerhouse. It's an empire now. That they start to break down because they overextend themselves. It's overreach now. And so, and it becomes very difficult in the way our system, our political system is designed to cut back significantly on that global presence. Because these very corporations that are directly benefited from that presence give money to politicians. That's the nature of our political system, is money now. They give money to politicians to maintain military bases throughout the United States and that global presence, because you have those that manufacture the weaponry that are directly benefited from the current policing of the world. And so we need to look at ourselves, and we need to talk about what is it that we can do to create a more um, uh, harmonious society, a society that's going to make sure that the people that are here have ample opportunity to take advantage of the changes in our economic structure and system, uh, because we've shifted a dominant global manufacturing-based economy to a service-oriented one, where technology is been used significantly to cut back in the production process, and in so doing, we don't need as many people to produce product, as we did in the past, and we've displaced large numbers of people. This mechanization, and with the introduction of computers, this has dramatically improved our productivity, but it's also resulted in corporations cutting back on their workforces, American workforces, you see. And American companies have also invested overseas heavily, because the costs of production are the highest costs of production tend to be labor, and therefore if they can pay lesser wages in other poorer countries, corporations are going to get up and leave the United States and produce products overseas, and that's what they've done. And so those changes in our society have caused a lot of friction and frustration among a previous workforce that sizable numbers benefited in terms of lifestyle and wages and benefits, direct benefits to these populations that have been displaced. And in recent times, you've had some political leaders, unfortunately, using the fear mongering and the scapegoating of immigrants to blame them for the problems that exist in the United States, when in fact it is the changes in our economy overwhelmingly that have caused the displacement and the underemployment of large numbers of areas of the United States, people that live in major areas of the United States, unfortunately. But it's not to try to marginalize and target the immigrants. It should be about trying to do what we can to provide training, the necessary re-education and training for our workforce to take advantage of the changes that are in this dynamic economy of the United States. So, and finally, when we talk about the wall, because of this is build a wall, Mexico's going to pay for it. It's ridiculous. No. Even if let's say you built a wall, not that I'm in favor of any such thing, but because of what it represents, we're going to wall ourselves off from the rest of the world, or from people from south of the border, which is ridiculous. A 2,000-mile wall, we're going to spend billions of dollars, and it's not going to stop illegal immigrants from coming to the United States. When you look at the illegal immigrants, there's roughly, it's estimated anywhere from 10 to 11 million out of a population of over 300 million in the United States. And so anyway, let's people that come here are not all coming from Mexico. Two-fifths, they say, 2/5 of the people that are here illegally were the result. They came here legally. They came here with student visas, and they overstayed the visa. They like the United States. They like the job opportunities here. They got their training here, and they stay and they contribute positively to our economy. So they establish families and roots here, and we're going to go out there and arrest them and deport them. It's ridiculous. Come up with a more practical solution to legalize them, and then you regulate them much more effectively to determine whether or not they are contributing to our society or they're a detriment. And no one is talking about open borders. That's the distortion, that the Democrats are in favor of open borders. No, the Democrats are about a humane immigration policy, a practical and rational immigration policy. one that we had in the past. No, I mean, for the first century of the United States, there was no quotas established. No, anybody that could get here became a citizen of the United States. It was only later that that bigotry, racism, and demagoguery was used to establish a quota system, saying that we want to create a white America, and we want to make sure that the people that immigrate here, the majority come from Europe. And fortunately, because of the 1950s, the civil rights movement, and the 1960s, because of our attitudes and values changed, and we said, okay, this immigration policy, sadly, is based on bigotry and racism even. And so what we want to do is change it and skew the number of people that are coming here towards people of color, from the continent of Africa, Asia, and Latin America, where at one time their quotas were limited relative to their European counterparts. And it was just based on bigotry. It was not based on any logic or reason. And then this raises the other point, is to say that somehow that Spanish-speaking people are not less capable of contributing to the American dream or American society is ridiculous. No group has a monopoly on ability or talent. Every group has something to offer our country. So I think I've covered a lot of the issues that needed to be addressed. And hopefully, maybe I changed some minds. Maybe some people say, you know what, we should be more humane and more conscientious about being the country that we espouse to be. That is a humane and conscientious country that helps people and not tries to hurt and demonize human beings, because we're all part of the same family at the end of the day. I'll end there, and thank you, and you guys all have a nice day. And I will continue to make these podcasts in addressing some of the critical issues of our time, whether it's, and today we talked about immigration, next time we'll talk about another issue. Maybe it'll be climate change. I think that more people need to address these issues, because we got too many people that are not informed and not educated to the facts, and use their platforms for demagoguery and tearing us apart, when we should be doing everything we can to bring people together. Okay, well, I'll leave it there, and thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.